Welcome to the Deep Dive. You've given us your resources, and our mission, as always, is to extract the knowledge you need quickly and, well, effectively.
That's the plan.
Today, we're plunging into the, let's say, critical world of mass rescue operations at sea. We're using the Miro guidance book, 4th-edition.pdf as our main source here.
Mm-hmm.
So for anyone listening who's wondered how the world actually prepares for those really big emergencies on the water, well, you're definitely in the right place.
Absolutely. We're really aiming to give you a clear picture of the fundamental ideas and maybe some surprising realities behind planning for these high stakes events.
Right.
It's about equipping you with actionable insights, not just listing off facts.
Think of it as your fast track to getting informed. This deep dive into the International Maritime Rescue Federation's guidance book, it's going to show how planners tackle those, well, rare but potentially catastrophic incidents.
Yeah, the ones where standard search and rescue just gets overwhelmed.
Exactly. We'll be looking at preparedness, that crucial element of coordination, and the really invaluable lessons learned from things that have happened before.
Our goal today is to sort of distill the essential parts of MR planning and execution from this document, highlighting the big challenges and the solutions being put forward.
Okay, let's dive in then.
Let's do it.
All right, let's unpack this. The guidance book, it kicks off by identifying a core problem. They call it the capability gap. What's the basic issue there?
Well, the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, they define a mass rescue operation, or MRO, as a situation needing immediate response to a large number of people in distress.
Yeah.
So many, in fact, that the capabilities normally available to the search and rescue authorities, they're just inadequate.
So a fundamental mismatch.
Exactly. That gap between the need and the normal capacity, that's why specific MRO planning is so critical. And what's, really eye-opening is how even countries with lots of resources can get overwhelmed fast. Think about a cruise ship incident way offshore. The logistics, just the sheer scale of moving potentially thousands of people, it can dwarf even national level capabilities.
Wow.
Which really underscores why things like prearranged international cooperation are so important. It's not just paperwork. It's potentially a lifeline.
So it's not just a simple case of needing, more rescue boats ready to go.
Ooh, far from it.
Yeah.
Normal capability is, it's a much broader concept. It goes beyond just the number of vessels or aircraft.
How so?
Well, it includes whether those units are actually operational when you need them. Do the crews have the specific training for a mass rescue? Which is, believe me, very different from rescuing one person.
I can imagine.
Can they operate safely in the conditions? And crucially, can they actually reach the scene within survival times?
The time factor.
Huge factor. And we also can't forget about places of safety ashore. Is their capacity to actually receive and care for potentially hundreds, maybe thousands of survivors? That's part of the normal capability assessment too.
And that capability need, it extends beyond just the actual rescue part, doesn't it?
Absolutely. MRO capability, it also means having enough coordinators to manage what can be an incredibly complex operation.
Right.
You need support staff for all the logistics, relief personnel, because these things can go on for a long time. You need enough resources on shore ambulances, hospitals with surge capacity, welfare aid like food, shelter, clothes.
It sounds like a massive logistical puzzle.
It is. And critically, it also includes having significantly enhanced communication capabilities. Just managing the sheer volume of information flowing back and forth is a major challenge.
Okay, so preparing for something we all hope never ever happens sounds like a massive undertaking.
It is precisely that. MROs, they fall into that category of low likelihood but high consequence events.
Right. Rare but potentially devastating.
Exactly. So while they might be rare, the potential impact is just so profound that thorough preparation isn't just, a good idea. It's an absolute imperative.
So you have to plan for it.
You have to. And the guidance emphasizes that MRO planning, it shouldn't be some standalone thing. It needs to be deeply integrated into the broader planning for major incidents.
Okay.
Using adaptable approaches, flexible ones that are understood and agreed upon by all the agencies and organizations that might end up getting involved.
So getting everyone on the same page beforehand is key. That baseline understanding.
Totally key. The concept of ownership of these plans is, the book calls it vital. And I agree.
Ownership, meaning
every organization, every individual responder who might play a role, they must know that this big picture plan exists. And crucially, they need to understand their specific part within it.
Because otherwise, chaos.
Pretty much. A lack of that shared understanding, it's just a recipe for confusion, inefficiency, delays. It severely undermines the response.
Right.
So the planners themselves, they have a big responsibility here. They need to foster that sense of ownership, not just in their own team, but across all the potential partner agencies too.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So how do you even begin to structure a plan for something potentially this huge?
Well, the guidance lays out 6 fundamental stages in MRO planning. Seems pretty logical when you list them out.
Okay, what are they?
First, you've got to identify all the stakeholders. Basically, any organization with a role or responsibility in emergency response at sea.
Right, who needs to be involved?
Exactly. Second, you do a thorough assessment to figure out where the specific capability gaps are. What are we short on?
Makes sense. What's third?
Third is identifying the ways, the means of filling those gaps. What strategies, what resources can we use?
Okay.
Fourth is the actual writing of the plan, documenting it all. Fifth, you conduct training based on that plan, targeted training.
And the last one?
And the 6th stage, this is really crucial, involves testing the plan and the training, using exercises, drills, and then reviewing and revising based on what you learned.
So it's not a one and done thing.
Not at all. And while those stages sound, logical, linear, the real challenge is that it's an iterative process. It's a loop.
A continuous loop.
Yeah. Every exercise, every real-world event, it forces you to reevaluate the plan. Adaptability becomes like the really crucial thing here. It's not just following a checklist.
Okay, so plan, do, learn, adjust. Let's dive deeper into that third point you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
How do you actually fill the capability gap? What are the main strategies?
The guidance points to 3 primary ways to tackle those shortfalls in at-sea response capacity.
Okay.
The first one is regional cooperation, setting up formal agreements, maybe bilateral or multilateral, between countries for mutual assistance across borders.
Right, neighbors helping neighbors, essentially.
Kind of, yeah. But it's really important to stress this isn't something you can just whip up in the middle of a crisis. No, it needs careful planning beforehand. Formal agreements, protocols need to be in place. You can't just, call another country during an emergency and expect their specialized assets to magically appear.
Right. That takes pre-planning. Bureaucracy doesn't vanish in a crisis.
Exactly. Gotta have it sorted out ahead of time.
Okay, what's the second main strategy?
The second approach is about proactively identifying and planning for the involvement of what you might call non-traditional resources. Assets that aren't, designated SAR units.
Like what?
Could be any ships nearby, commercial vessels, fishing boats, maybe even yachts or leisure craft. Could be aircraft that aren't normally SAR, land transport. Basically, any extra facilities or people who could potentially help out.
So casting a wider net for potential help.
Pretty much. Thinking outside the standard SAR box.
And the third way to bridge that gap?
The third strategy is, it's quite interesting actually. It focuses on extending the survival times of the people in distress.
Extending survival times? How?
Well, instead of focusing only on getting everyone out of the water immediately, the idea is to provide support. Maybe to people still on a damaged but stable ship or those in proper survival craft.
So help them hang on longer.
Exactly. Help them endure until enough rescue resources can actually get there. And this idea, it's actually influenced the IMO's definition of rescue.
Really? How so?
Well, the definition now implicitly includes providing support alongside the traditional idea of retrieval. It's a shift. It's not just about pulling them out right now. It's about ensuring they survive until they can be safely moved.
That's a really significant shift in thinking, actually. It broadens the whole idea of what rescue means.
It really does. And underpinning all 3 of these strategies is the critical importance of doing thorough risk analysis.
Risk analysis.
Meaning carefully looking at geographical areas. Where are incidents more likely? Where is response capability inherently lower, maybe due to remoteness?
Okay.
And mapping out where all the existing SAR facilities are, what they can do that's fundamental to spotting the weak points in the overall network.
So you've got potentially all these resources, different agencies, maybe different countries involved. How on earth do you manage that complexity during a crisis?
Yeah, that brings us squarely into the absolutely crucial area of command control, coordination, and communication. C4, as it's often called.
C4.
Yeah.
Sounds military.
It's used widely in emergency management. In an MRO, effective coordination isn't just important, it's paramount.
Paramount.
The guidance uses the analogy of a jigsaw puzzle. All the different pieces, the agencies, the resources, they all need to fit together seamlessly.
Ah, right. to see the whole picture.
Exactly. Without that coordination, you risk chaos. Agencies working at cross purposes, duplicating effort, or worse, missing things. Think about early responses to major disasters before systems like ICS were common.
ICS.
Incident Command System. It developed partly to prevent that kind of disarray when multiple agencies respond together.
Okay, so who's typically in charge of making sure all those jigsaw pieces fit?
Well, generally, you respect the existing command structures within each responding organization. You don't just throw those out.
Right.
But an MRO demands an overarching coordinated approach, and that's built on cooperation. Everyone involved needs to understand and accept the coordination structure that's put in place for that incident.
And are there specific roles for this coordination?
Yes, there are key roles defined. There's the SAR coordinator, who has overall responsibility for SAR services in a region. Then for a specific incident, there's the SAR mission coordinator, the SMC. That's the person coordinating that particular response.
Okay, SMC. Got it.
Then on scene, you have on-scene coordinator, the OSC. They're the SMC's representative right there at the incident site.
The eyes and ears on the ground or water.
Exactly. And if you have multiple aircraft involved, which is common, you'll often have an aircraft coordinator, or ACO, to manage the airspace safely and effectively.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of different coordinators needing to work together perfectly.
It can be complex, absolutely, which is why that Incident Command System, ICS, is so often recommended. It provides a standard, flexible structure for command and control when you have multiple agencies.
And how do they all talk to each other?
Good question. Liaison officers become really important. They act as bridges between different command posts or agencies. And effective, reliable communication between, say, the main Rescue Coordination Center, the RCC, and shoreside coordination efforts, that's just the absolute lifeblood. You need clear channels.
Okay, that covers the operational side.
Yeah.
But what about managing, the information going out to the rest of the world? I mean, in a mass rescue, the pressure from the public, the media, it must be intense.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Massive pressure. And the guidance dedicates significant attention to public relations in an MRO.
I bet.
The sheer scale, the number of people involved, it inevitably creates huge interest and concern. From survivors, from their families and friends desperate for news, and of course, from the news media.
So you need a plan for that too.
Definitely. A proactive, well-thought-out PR strategy is essential, not an afterthought.
So what does that look like? What are the key parts of that PR strategy?
Well, first off, you need designated points of contact, trained spokespeople ready to go.
Right. Not just anyone talking to the press.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And it's vital that all the responding organizations coordinate their messaging, keep it consistent, accurate.
What should they be saying?
The focus should always be on factual, clear information. Avoid technical jargon. Avoid speculation at all costs. That just fuels rumors.
Good point.
And the plan needs to cover how to communicate with different groups. The people directly involved, the news media, anxious families, the general public, maybe even VIPs or politicians who get involved.
That's a lot of different audiences.
It is. And you have to balance all those communication demands with the primary operational needs. The rescue effort comes first, but you can't ignore the information vacuum either.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit. Let's talk about the people actually in distress. What kind of situations might rescuers face when they arrive?
Yeah, the term persons in distress, it covers a really wide range of scenarios. Well, people might still be on board their original vessel. Maybe it's disabled or damaged, but not sinking immediately. They might be in survival craft, lifeboats, life rafts after evacuating.
Oh, in the water.
Or, tragically, yes, some might be in the water. The core principle, though, is that the focus is on rescuing people at risk, regardless of how immediate the danger seems right that second.
If it's an MRO, they're inherently at risk.
Exactly. The classification itself signifies a high level of distress.
And with potentially so many people needing help at once, how do rescuers make those incredibly tough calls about who gets rescued first? Prioritization.
Prioritization. That is genuinely one of the biggest ethical and practical challenges in MROs, largely because of that capability gap we keep coming back to.
Not enough resources for everyone at once.
Right. The goal is always save every life. But the reality is, with limited resources, hard choices might have to be made.
Is there any guidance on how to make those choices?
Yes, the guidance document does include a suggested retrieval priority list. It's a tool, mainly for planning and training.
What does it suggest?
Generally, it prioritizes people who are responsive and can help themselves first, then those who are unresponsive, then those responsive but less able to help themselves, and finally, the remaining responsive people.
Interesting order. responsive first.
Yeah, but it's crucial to stress this is a suggested list. On-scene commanders, the OSCs, they should always discuss and adapt these priorities based on the actual situation whenever possible.
Okay. And triage, assessing injuries.
Yes, initial triage, like a quick assessment, should happen as soon as possible upon contact. Then more thorough medical checks during transfer to places of safety. Using a consistent triage system, like color coding tags, is also really important for record keeping and tracking everyone.
Right. Tracking is vital with so many people. So once people are rescued from the immediate danger, where do they go? What happens next for them?
This brings us to the concept of a place of safety. It's a key term.
Okay. What defines a place of safety?
According to the official IMSAR manual, that's the big international SAR guide, it's a location where the rescue operation is considered finished. Meaning the survivors' immediate lives aren't threatened anymore, their basic human needs can be met. Shelter, food, water, basic medical and arrangements can be made for them to get to their final destination.
And where can this place of safety be?
It could initially be a suitable vessel at sea, a large ship, maybe a passenger ferry, or another rescue vessel that can take on many survivors. Or, ultimately, it's a location on land.
So a rescue ship could be a temporary place of safety.
Precisely. These temporary places of safety at sea, they need to offer the basics. Shelter, warmth, sanitation, information about what's happening, and communication links.
And then the final places of safety ashore.
Right. When survivors get transferred ashore, the requirements are more comprehensive. You need secure shelter, access to proper medical support, welfare like food, drink, dry clothing, ongoing information, communication facilities, and help with onward travel.
Seems like a lot to set up quickly.
It is, and the guidance really stresses involving local communities in planning these onshore reception facilities. They often play a huge role.
Makes sense. Anything else about the survivors?
Yes, a really important point. Mental trauma. It's highly likely for both survivors and responders in an MRO, so planning for psychological first aid and potential counseling needs is absolutely key.
That's a critical consideration. Okay, we've covered the main processes. Does the guidance talk about any specific situations or areas that pose unique MRO challenges?
It does, yeah. It highlights a few special considerations. One big one is remote areas.
Remote areas?
Places so far from normal SAR bases that designated units just can't get there within likely survival times.
So the capability gap is even bigger there.
Exactly. Planning for those areas needs to be adapted, relying much more heavily on those additional opportunistic resources we talked about, ships of opportunity, etc. Well, the guidance notes that catastrophic incidents themselves can actually reduce MRO capability. If the event damages the very infrastructure or affects the agencies that would normally respond.
Like a tsunami hitting a Coast Guard base during a maritime incident offshore?
Precisely that kind of scenario. It also touches on the complexities of responding to deliberate acts, piracy, terrorism at sea, and the very sensitive issue of rescuing migrants in distress.
What does it say about migrants?
It emphasizes the fundamental principle. Rescue anyone in distress at sea, regardless of their status or why they are at sea, and crucially, the legal obligation of non-refoulement.
Non-refoulement.
Meaning you can't return people to a place where their lives or freedoms would be threatened. That's a major legal and ethical consideration in those specific MRO scenarios.
It really seems like in such a complex, high-stakes field, learning from experience, good and bad, must be absolutely vital.
Oh, fundamental. Totally fundamental. The guidance really hammers home the importance of a continuous cycle.
The cycle we touched on earlier.
Exactly. You plan. You train based on the plan. You test it through exercises or real incidents. You review the outcomes thoroughly. Analyze the lessons learned, what worked, what didn't. And then you feed those crucial lessons right back into the planning and training. Constantly refining, constantly improving. It never really stops.
So training is ongoing.
Essential. For all of the specialists involved, SMCs, OSCs, RCC staff, rescue crews, and the training needs to cover not just technical skills, but teamwork, communication under pressure, understanding exercises.
And the exercises themselves.
They need clear aims. What are we trying to test? And they come in different flavors, live drills, tabletop simulations. Each has different benefits.
And after an exercise or a real event.
Thorough review and detailed reporting are vital, identifying exactly what needs improvement. And crucially, sharing those lessons.
Sharing them where?
Regionally, internationally. Through organizations like the IMO, like the IMRF itself. So everyone can learn and improve global MRO preparedness. And it's not just about finding failures. It's just as important to analyze successes. Why did something go well? How can we replicate that?
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's bring it back to our listener. For someone who wanted to quickly grasp the essentials of mass rescue operations from this deep dive today, what are the main takeaways?
I'd say first, MRO planning is complex, yes, but absolutely essential. The core idea is anticipating that your normal resources will be limited.
The capability gap.
Right, so you develop strategies to deal with that through cooperation, finding extra resources, maybe even extending survival times with support. Second, coordination and clear communication are paramount, getting all those different players working together smoothly.
Like the jigsaw puzzle.
Exactly. And third, it's about continuous learning. Plan, train, test, review, revise. That cycle is key. Ultimately, preparing well, even for rare events, drastically improves the chances of a better outcome and saving lives.
And what's maybe one of those intriguing details from our discussion that might really stick with people?
I think maybe that evolution in the definition of rescue to include support is quite significant. Yeah, it shows a shift. Recognizing that sometimes helping people survive where they are until help arrives is the first best step, not always immediate extraction.
That's a powerful idea.
I think so. Also, maybe the emphasis on learning from both success and failure. It's not just about fixing mistakes, but also understanding and repeating what works well. It's a more, nuanced approach to getting better.
Good points. Where can people go if they want to dig deeper into this?
Well, the source itself is available. The IMRF, International Maritime Rescue Federation, their website is mrfmro.org.
morfmro.org.
Yep. They have a wealth of freely available stuff there, including the full guidance book we've been discussing, the ROMRO Guidance Book 4th edition.pdf. Anyone wanting more detail, that's the place to go.
Excellent. And finally, as always, a thought to leave you, our listener, with. Given the ever-increasing scale and complexity of activity on the world's oceans and waterways, how can individuals, how can organizations, maybe those outside the traditional SAR world, how can they become better integrated into this broader network of preparedness for mass rescue operations?
That's a big question.
It really highlights that maybe there's a shared responsibility here, doesn't it? For safety on our seas. Something to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.